Hey guys, I'm Jax, and this is my spoiler review for the first two episodes of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. Now, I love this universe and all these characters, even though all of the films are flawed in their own very different, unique ways. I love a big lizard, and if you can breathe fire or atomic breath or whatever, that's even cooler. But I particularly love King Kong. I have always been in love with Peter Jackson's movie, the original movie from the 30s. I just love the idea of a big monkey on an island fighting dinosaurs. That's just... even saying that just sentence out loud makes me genuinely, just happy. It just makes me feel warm inside. It's like after you eat a good meal, it's like, I just feel good. I just feel happy that a big monkey fights dinosaurs on an island. So whilst this Kong in this universe doesn't fight dinosaurs, which is admittedly very disappointing, they make up for that fact by making this big monkey an even bigger monkey. And all the monsters, despite not being dinosaurs, have a fun little gimmick. And that gimmick is that they all have their own unique, very specific, landscape-oriented camouflage situation. So I was very excited when we started with John Goodman and he's running about the island and he throws a MacGuffin thingy, a plot device into the ocean, and we get our first and only big monster battle for the first two episodes. There is nothing that can get me back into the world of Skull Island more so than a ridiculously specific visual camouflage in the landscape styled monster. We had spiders' legs that were just bamboo sticks. There was that one that was just a log, and then he got up and all his feet were little logs. There's this big rocky cliff situation, and the crab monster gets up out of the rocks, because he was a rock, but he was just camouflaging. And then he gets up, and we see where he was, which is just this perfect crab hole. These monsters, they just sit in hiding in these perfect camouflages waiting for each other. And it was easily my favorite part of this show. Not to say that I didn't like this show. I thought it was a pretty good time. I had a lot of fun, mostly, watching this series. It does feel, because there are two specific, different, unique timelines, that one timeline is fantastic and one timeline is not as fantastic. And I wouldn't say that I hated the show, but I think maybe my expectations were a little high. And they shouldn't be, because every single one of the movies in this universe have disappointed me on some level, and then every time I go and revisit it, I find more I enjoy. But on that first watch, I'm always like, oh, I always set my expectations too high, and I don't know why. These are just stupid, dumb monster movies. But every time I'm like, this could be the greatest thing I've ever seen. And it never is. And I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. It's like my expectations were the size of Kong Skull Island's Kong. They were just really big, potentially too big. And they should have been down at a regular King Kong size. Like a Peter Jackson's King Kong. Just here. Not here, but here. So apart from the potential very big monkey and potential big lizard that fire breathes and all that crazy stuff, another huge draw of this series is that we get two Russells for the price of one. Kurt Russell playing old man character name, whatever he is, Lee Shaw. And then we get Wyatt Russell as young that character. What's his name? Lee Shaw. Honestly, this concept and idea to cast a son and dad as the younger and older versions of these characters is ingenious. It's inspired. And I also feel like if they hadn't found a family that I just loved and wanted to see do this, I might find it weird and gimmicky and just kind of ugh. Kurt Russell is obviously one of the greatest actors ever. The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, and of course his role as Mr. Nobody in the Fast and Furious franchise. But his son, Wyatt Russell, is super underrated. He is spectacular in everything I've seen him in. I just really, really love him. He's just got a great vibe. So I was super excited to see these two guys in it. And I guess the only disappointment of them both playing the same character in different timelines is that they can't share screen time together, because they are just so charismatic and awesome. I feel like they would be good together. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe there would be too much charisma on screen, and I wouldn't be able to handle it, and I would just die. So Wyatt Russell and Kurt Russell being so fantastic, obviously I was very excited they were teaming up to play the same character. But I love that the show itself was so excited that they were doing this little gimmick thing, but hopefully it's going to be more than a gimmick and just this inspired casting decision. They were so excited that in the opening credits, which I found so funny, in the opening credits is in the role of Lee Shaw, Kurt Russell, and then Kurt Russell's name fades, and there's like, and Wyatt Russell. They just really, really wanted people to know, in case they weren't aware, they're like, guys, we got the son and the dad, two super famous good actors, they're playing the same guy. Isn't that cool? And it's like, yeah, alright, calm down, Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. It's pretty cool, but you're drawing attention to it now, like in your opening credits, and it's making it less cool. So maybe don't. I'd be excited too. If I'm being honest, I'd be excited too. I'd be like, how did we get them both to sign up? Probably with all that Apple money. I mean, they must have all the money, which is why I am mildly disappointed the CGI isn't as good as a movie, because Apple has literally all the money. Just like put more money in. Pay them more money to make the CGI look perfect. It looks really good, really, really good, just like not as good as Godzilla 2015. Which came out like 8 years ago, and I know it's a movie, and the budgets are different, but still, it feels like it just has like a little, like there's something off. There's a bit of a sheen wrong with it. Apart from that, it looks very, very, very good. And I love how many live, real locations they are. Wyatt Russell and his two scientist buddies in the jungle for real. All of that looks amazing. And so, of course, I was not very surprised when I found that Wyatt Russell in his timeline is stealing the show and carrying all of that, and then Kurt Russell, when he briefly appears in the last 5 minutes of his timeline, he makes that timeline good. I mean, hopefully it gets better. It's not terrible, but it feels like after the first 5-10 minutes, it suddenly just became very like, oh, it's just going to be a show like this, is it? Like, there's just some CIA government people tracking them down. I mean, they're Monarch, but they're the CIA or whatever, essentially. Just some government guys tracking them down. They're all not friends, but by the end of it, they'll all be friends. And no one really grabbed me, like, from a character perspective. None of the characters really vibed with me or connected with me, and I was just kind of a bit like, I mean, no one's bad. No one's bad in this. They're all just kind of fine. They all just kind of reminded me of, like, some Netflix show that I would watch, and I would binge all 10 episodes, like, one night. And like the next morning I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh, I saw this really good spy show called The Night Agent. And someone would be like, what happened in it? And I'm like, I can't remember. And they're like, oh, when did you see it? And I'm like, last night, 7 hours ago, but I do not remember anything. It's given me strong that kind of vibes. And I don't know how, because this is a show and a world in which there's a hollow earth and there's a Godzilla. Really, the only stuff for me that was super exciting in this modern day timeline was all the Godzilla kind of stuff around. Like all the signs being like, if there's a Godzilla, go down this way. And all the rockets and all that preparation for Godzilla. You got a taxi driver who's like, that San Francisco Godzilla thing was all CGI. I've got a podcast. And I'm like, haha. I'm kind of fascinated to hear that podcast. I feel like it starts off really strong. We go full soap opera straight away. And this girl, she's going to her dead father's secret home. And in there is a secret family. And she's got a secret half brother. And there's all this crazy soap opera stuff. And I'm like, ooh, get this soap opera goodness in me. And then suddenly they're on the streets. And then an alarm goes off. And they all have to run down because surprise Godzilla. And I'm like, okay. I'm in. And then I feel like over the course of the second episode, I just suddenly was like, this isn't dragging or like, there's nothing necessarily wrong. I'm just suddenly like left with this feeling like, oh, this is very much a second episode. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of episodes that feel like, yeah, this is just like an in-between bit where some stuff happens, people talk, and then there'll be some big exciting moments of things happening. But overall, this mystery of like, oh my god, where's her father? Probably just like somewhere else. And I don't know, it just, nothing feels wholly original or unique, and it's like, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to do something that's like unlike anything I've ever seen before. But I want it to be interesting and compelling, and like, I don't know, the mystery to me is not being compelling so far. They're like, oh, what happened to our father? He's almost definitely not dead. And I just don't really know why I should care yet, but I'm holding out judgment. We've got 10 episodes. We're only 2 in. But I did kind of want and kind of hope for more. And it is really kind of frustrating because all of that stuff is a bit like, it's fine. I don't hate it. I just don't really love it, which disappoints me. And then we go to Wyatt Russell's time in the past, and he's hanging out with one of the guys from the Workaholics, and there's other lady, and they're scientists, and they're like, we're two scientists, and we're driven and eager to find out monster stuff or whatever. And they're the founders or the to-be founders of Monarch. And then they've just got this army guy who's along for the ride, who punches people in bars because he doesn't like how they touch ladies. And he just doesn't like bullies. And so he has to go and be with them. And we see him respecting the lady at one point, and then we go back in time and he doesn't respect her. So we know there's been this really rich history of these characters bonding and forming this relationship, and all of that stuff is so good. Oh my lord, it's so good. I love Wyatt Russell. I love the two scientist characters. One of them is in Workaholics, one of them isn't. Who are their names? What are their names? I don't really care, but I love all of that stuff. There were eggs, then the eggs exploded into little bug thingies, and the bug things crawled up and they killed her, maybe? Or she'll turn into a bug. No, that's definitely not going to happen. I don't know. All of that stuff, loved it. There was a big boat stuck on an island. Lost is my favorite thing ever, and so a boat on an island, I'm all there for. How did it get there? Dragon. It's so good. The dragon's like dropping mucus or whatever all over these people, and they're just like sitting there. So gross, so good. Loved it. It's just so odd because it's like half the show is great, then half the show is fine.